Hello, everyone. A very logical day to all of you. And here we are with our editorial of The Hindu, the first editorial we are taking today. And as you know by now, that we are going to discuss this article along with the difficult words that we come across. And let us see how we can actually skip the difficult words also while we are reading to get to the central idea. We can understand the context of the word while we are reading, so we do not need to go into the dictionary meaning at the time of reading. So this is one thing that I would suggest, that do not refer to a dictionary while you're reading. But yes, once we come to the major point, the central idea of this article, and then definitely we are going to discuss the words, right? Come on. So the first article, this is overly differential. Now, suppose we do not know the meaning of differential, no problem. We'll continue reading the article. Automatically, we'll get the meaning here. So, while upholding demonetization, SC failed to hold government accountable. It is an oft repeated judicial view that courts must defer to the elected government's judgment in matters of economic and social policy. Now, see from this sentence, the first and the second one, what we get to know is that upholding would mean what? Upholding is like, okay, considering that is whatever the government did is right. So they are upholding demonetization. And what did the SC do? It failed to hold the government accountable. मतलब उसने कोई भी blame government पे नहीं डाला कि ये this is the responsibility of the government to do so, right? So it did not say anything like this. And then the paragraph says that it is an oft repeated judicial view. Oft is often. That courts must differ. तो यहाँ पे differ का meaning अपने आप आ जाएगा, that they must agree to what the government does in the matters of economic and social policy. The interventions are usually limited to instances where executive decisions are palpably arbitrary or patently illegal. So when is the SC required to intervene? So we get the meaning of the word intervene also. And when can it intervene? Usually when instances means examples. The executive decisions, that means executive is the government, right? Their decisions are palpably arbitrary. Arbitrary is where it is to do with like being very strongly dominant, right? So if arbiter is a judge, the person who would come out as a mediator or as a settler, and he is going to say something, and then the two groups will agree to whatever he says. That person is working as an arbiter. Now, if the decision taken by the executive or the government is arbitrary, and that too palpably का meaning आ जाएगा हमें कि you can see, it is very obvious that see the government is doing whatever it feels like. तो बोलते हैं हम इसे उसका arbitrary decision है. Matlab, it is taken and it is very obvious that it is not considering anybody else. And in that manner, in that case, the SC can intervene if the government becomes very arbitrary. Or if the government or the executive works something that is illegal, only then the SC would intervene. In this backdrop, it is no surprise that 4 of the 5 judges on a constitution bench of the Supreme Court deferred to the government's wisdom in dramatically announcing the move on November 8, 2016, to demonetize all 500,000 notes that were then in circulation. The scope of judicial intervention was only to examine the decision-making process, but the majority has given its uncritical endorsement to the process. We can understand the word endorsement means acknowledgement. उसने अपनी हामी भर दी है. Out of 5, the 4 judges there, right, they said yes, this is what the government is doing, and then they announced it also. So they gave the acknowledgement, the agreement to the process, terming it to be free of flaws. मतलब इसमें कोई गलती नहीं है. It has upheld the government's power to demonetize notes without quantitative restrictions and accepted the claim that there was adequate consultation between the union government, which initiated the proposal, and the RBI. What might seem depressing about the majority verdict is that it has made light of the enormous suffering of the people that demonetization entailed. Okay, we'll read till here and we'll understand. Made light of, that means it did not consider the effect of this demonetization announcement on the common people or on the people, on the masses. Uska dhyan nahi diya, right? So if I consider this part of the paragraph till here entailed, we get to understand two things. One, SC actually agreed to what the government said about demonetization, or when it came up with this point of demonetization, and SC upheld it, it deferred to it, to this government's decision. It did not say anything against it. But then we get one point because 4 out of 5 judges उसने कहा है. ठीक है, तो इसका मतलब अब ये बेंच क्या हुआ? 5 judges का बेंच हुआ, उसमें से 4 judges they agreed to what the government said or did uncritically, मतलब they did not point out any flaw to it, right? That means we can understand or infer that there would be one judge who was not totally for it. He might have been against it. अभी हमने कुछ पढ़ा नहीं है, ठीक है? So उनका स्कोप क्या था? SC इंटरवीन तभी करेगा जब कुछ गवर्नमेंट इलीगल करता हो, या it was it would become very arbitrary, right? इसका मतलब बस हमने जो बोल दिया सो बोल दिया, ऐसा होता है ना, right? In that case only the SC is going to intervene, but the SC did not intervene in this case of the decision of demonetization. Is this much is understood, right? In the last 2-3 lines that we have read here, they said that it was a consultation between the union government, which came up with the proposal, and the RBI. But then what might seem distressing, so underline this little twist in the idea that is starting from here. तो ऑथर ने अभी तक तो बोला कि देखो एससी अपहेल्ड, एससी ने अपहेल्ड किया गवर्नमेंट के डिसीजन को डिमोनेटाइजेशन के बारे में. देन एससी का स्कोप क्या था? से उसके प्रोसेस को समझना. एससी ने क्या किया? एससी सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्या किया? इट अपहेल्ड द डिसीजन, राइट? When is it going to intervene? Only if the government becomes arbitrary or it is going to do something illegal, then the SC can intervene. All this said and done, the author says that, see, what might seem distressing about the majority verdict is that it has made light of the enormous suffering of the people. इसका मतलब demonetization overnight ये decision लेने पर जो लोगों को तकलीफ हुई, जो सफरिंग हुई, इसको एससी ने नजरअंदाज कर लिया है. It is made light of. That means it did not give much consideration to the enormous suffering that these people have gone through or would go through when that decision was taken. Now, while there are observations that recognize the possibility of hardship and that demonetization may have ultimately been a failure, these are limited by context to say neither individual suffering nor errors of judgment can be cited to invalidate the action. Then nothing can be done, nothing can be mentioned कि ये जो action था वो सही नहीं था, invalid था, right? So nothing of that sort has been given. So this part of the paragraph is actually giving you the changed version here, and this part was giving you the scope and what the SC did. This is from the point of view of the author. This is given by the author. Now, while there are observations that recognize the possibility of hardship and that demonetization may have ultimately been a failure, these are limited by context to say neither individual suffering nor errors of judgment can be cited to invalidate the action. उसे observations की बात की कि ज़्यादा कुछ दिए नहीं है to invalidate the action. Now, the majority has brushed aside substantial arguments based on proportionality, holding that demonetization survives every test. Every test becomes a very strong word, no? And brush aside would mean उसे हटा दिया, मतलब उस पे ज्यादा फोकस नहीं किया. The majority has brushed aside substantial arguments based on proportionality, holding that, मतलब उनका क्या मानना था, that demonetization survives every test for proportionality. Well, demonetization का जो decision था, it was absolutely right. there was a legitimate purpose. And how are they stating it that there was a legitimate purpose? मतलब इनका हक था, इनका सही था, इनका कोई रीजन था, कोई ऑब्जेक्टिव था, वो भी legitimate था, तो हम कुछ बोल ही नहीं सकते हैं. That is what the SC did. Unearthing, and this was the purpose, because it is given in a bracket. So what was the purpose? Unearthing fake currency and hoarded wealth and combating the terror funding. So this was the objective of why they came up with the overnight decision of demonetization. There was a nexus between the action and the objectives, and the court did not have the expertise to suggest a less intrusive way of achieving these objectives. Why? Because SC has to do with judicial is the judicial system. It has to do with something that is according to the law and all. So coming up with this economic and social policy, उसने second line में ही कहा था कि matters related to the economic and social policies उसके decisions पे SC नहीं बोल सकेगा कुछ, right? तो यहाँ पर भी इसने यही कहा है that there is a nexus between the action and the objectives, and the court did not have the expertise to suggest a less intrusive way of achieving these objectives. मतलब demonetization नहीं तो फिर कुछ और क्या सजेस्ट करेगा ऐसी, क्योंकि ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या था that they had to rake up all this fake currency and the hoarded wealth, and which was leading to the terror funding. इस सबको बाहर करना था. They had to reveal all that, they had to come up with all that. So however, it does not properly address the question on whether the adverse circumstances could have been limited. See, however, again gives you a twist, and that twist is that, see, SC did not have the expertise, fine, understood. But then, could the suffering that these people have gone through, could that suffering have been reduced or have been limited? क्या कुछ ऐसा हो सकता था? ठीक है, उस पे भी कुछ नहीं बोला. So let us read the sentence again. However, it does not properly address the question on whether the adverse consequences could have been limited. क्या उन consequences को limit किया जा सकता था, रोका जा सकता था, रोका नहीं, कम किया जा सकता था, but then the SC did not revert to it. It is unfortunate that the court had nothing critical to say about the government failing to anticipate the ruinous effect of extinguishing the value of 86% of the available currency on the economy and the immense miseries it heaped on the population. So, this was the adverse effect, right? This is how the people were affected. This was the adverse effect, the negative effect that demonetization had. 86% of the currency went out of circulation. जो अवेलेबल करेंसी था सर्कुलेशन में था उसकी वैल्यू खत्म हो गई, extinguishing, and this had a ruinous effect. The government failed to anticipate this ruinous effect of extinguishing the value. तो गवर्नमेंट ने इस बात पे ध्यान नहीं दिया कि जो एग्जिस्टिंग जो अवेलेबल करेंसी है उसकी वैल्यू आप जीरो कर दे रहे हो ओवरनाइट, तो इससे लोगों पर कितना असर पड़ेगा या इकोनॉमी पर क्या फर्क पड़ेगा. सो दिस failure of the government to anticipate this ruinous effect, the SC did not comment on this failure of the government. I hope this much is understood, right? So this is the immense miseries it heaped on the population. Heaped का मतलब heap होता है एक पाइल करना, तो heaped का मतलब क्या होगा, इकट्ठा होते जाना. तो population पे लोगों पर ये सारी miseries एक के ऊपर एक के ऊपर एक पाइल अप होती गई. Justice Nagaratna's dissent, holding the process to be flawed. अभी तक हमने पढ़ा था that this was free of flaws. And we had also read that 4 out of the 5 judges were for it. That means one judge was against it, and this person becomes BV Nagaratna's dissent. तो dissent का meaning हमें समझ में आ गया. That dissent का मतलब होता है कि you are going opposite to what the others are doing, right? So that means disagree or being a rebel, being a maverick, right? You can come up with this word disagree also. राइट, तो डिसेंट मतलब जो लोगों ने कहा है उससे अलग चले जाना, उससे खिलाफ चले जाना. सो इज डिसेंट, एंड व्हाट वाज हाउ डिड ही गो अगेंस्ट दिस, बिकॉज ही हेल्ड द प्रोसेस टू बी फ्लॉड. दैट मींस देयर वाज fault in it. And the RBI's approach to be without application of mind is a consolation for those who want the courts to hold those in power to account. Hold to account matlab hold these people responsible. So those people who have come up with the decision of who took the decision of demonetization, one of the judges held them responsible for all the miseries that the people have been put to. So, in a larger sense, of course, a judicial rap on policy question matters little. ठीक है, a judicial rap on policy questions matters little. तो सबसे पहले हमें इस little का meaning समझ में आ जाना चाहिए. That little means not much. So even if the judiciary would hold a stick to the government, ठीक है कि देखो तुमने सही नहीं किया है, पर इससे ज्यादा फर्क कुछ होने वाला है नहीं. But it might give the governments cause for pause before implementing decisions with far reaching consequences for the people. That means, see, the judiciary, if or the SC, if it holds the government responsible that, see, this is not the right thing that you have done. वो इतना भी इतना बोल देती तो गवर्नमेंट को क्या होता है, गवर्नमेंट को लगता कि नहीं, जो एससी है या जो जुडिशरी सिस्टम है वो भी हमें कुछ बोल सकती है हमारे डिसीजंस पे, because it is affecting the people so much, this cause for pause. So next time when the government comes up with such a decision that is affecting the people at a large scale, the government will take a pause and reconsider before coming up with that decision. तो ये एक छोटा सा एक कॉशन था जो ऑथर ने कहा कि देखो एससी ने कुछ कहा तो नहीं, लेकिन अगर वो कह देती तो नेक्स्ट टाइम एक फार रीचिंग कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस वाला जो डिसीजन है उसे लेने से पहले द गवर्नमेंट वुड हैव टू थिंक ट्वाइस. Now, I hope you have understood this much. We had the work of the SC. One, that SC had to defer to the government's decision. Four out of the five judges said yes, it is correct. This process, this is free of flaws. But one of them said no, the government is responsible for the ruinous consequences that or miseries that these people had to face. According to the author, the judiciary could have said something, but it did not address this question of the government or this decision taking of the government. But according to the author, had the judiciary said something, right? So next time the government, before taking a decision which would have a far-reaching consequence, the government would be thinking twice or reconsidering its own decisions. ये हो जाता. ठीक है, तो हमें अब पैसेज में से ये समझ में आ जाता है कि ऑथर का दिमाग कहाँ चल रहा है, ऑथर अपना व्यू पॉइंट कैसे दे रहा है, एंड व्हाट इज ही स्टेटिंग. दिस इज व्हाट वी नीड टू डू. वी नीड टू फिल्टर आउट द व्हाट इज सेड by the author, that means what is the opinion of the author. Secondly, what he is stating, because what we have seen these words, no, could have, would have, might have, मतलब ऐसा हो सकता था. अगर जुडिशरी या एससी कुछ बोल देती गवर्नमेंट को, उसे रिस्पॉन्सिबल मान लेती, तो ऐसा हो सकता था, या अगर ऐसा करेगी तो ऐसा होगा आगे. This is what we need to understand when we are reading the article. So it is not very difficult, right? But gradually you will come into that mindset where you are able to filter whatever is being said. Right? Now, there are two, three things that I would want to tell you. One thing, we could understand the meaning of these difficult words that I've highlighted here by reading the article in a flow. Right? So now what your task is to note down these words, like defer, intervention में intervene word आ जाता है, palpable, arbitrary. I have explained this word to you. Bench, the word bench I have marked. Why? Because bench becomes a metonymy. It is a figure of speech. Metonymy. NYMY. Right? So bench is an example of that. Bench stands for the group of judges there. Then we had the word endorsement. Endorsement, you can write the meaning as acknowledgement or agreement. Right. Then verdict. Verdict may, if I have marked this word because I would like to tell you, Were as a root word means true, and dict dict would be related to speaking something or the use of words. तो dict से dictionary आ जाता है, dictate आ जाता है, dictation आ जाता है, and were is true. So verdict is whatever has been said truly. Invalidate you can understand उसकी value complete होना validate हो जाता है, incomplete होना मतलब it is no more correct. So that is invalidated. So we have this word val as a root word here. Right? Then heaped we could understand from the passage only, piled up, and we could understand the word dissent, something that is going against, somebody who goes against the set rules, maverick हो जाता है, rebel हो जाता है, disagree हो जाता है. ठीक है? And then we had the phrase hold somebody to account for something. So hold to account means to make that person responsible. Right? That's all for today. See you tomorrow again. Bye.